Hi everyone, I'm back. It's a new year and I have some ideas. I'm not one for New Year's resolutions, I never have been, but this year I feel a little differently. Not that I'm making resolutions, but I'm feeling inspired by a book that I read right before the holidays called Feel Good Productivity by Ali Abdaal. It really surprised me. I'm not really into self-help books per se. I mean, I knew it would be good, but I wasn't sure how applicable it would be to creative people. But actually, he touches on the subject early on in one of the studies that he cites. Specifically, he talks about the work of psychologist Barbara Fredrickson at the University of North Carolina. Her broaden and build theory points to a direct correlation between positive emotions and heightened creativity. When we feel good, we're more creative. It's as simple as that. This goes against every stereotype I know about starving artists and that true art comes from pain and that we have to struggle to be real artists. Turns out you just need to be creative. And being in good spirits can help with that. And just to be clear, I don't feel particularly bad, but things could always be better. So I've decided to take a page out of Ali Abdaal's book and, well, feel good. He breaks down the book into 3 basic sections: play, power, and people. The 3 Ps, which he refers to as energizers. And without going into too much detail, he means that if we can have fun with our work, have a sense of agency in our work and life, and cultivate healthy relationships and prioritize human connection, these 3 Ps will lead to a happier and more productive version of ourselves. I've talked about the importance of play in creative pursuits before. Having fun and enjoying the process should be a no-brainer for us creative types. However, not everything we have to deal with is fun. For those things, we can look into ways to make things more fun, or at least less horrible. Finding ways to gamify certain tasks that we would rather not do is one way of making them more fun. But also looking at ways to restructure what we actually have to do and possibly outsource some things. He also references something philosopher Alan Watts talked about, being sincere instead of serious, which I feel like is a really easy way to think about play in our work. If you're playing a board game with a group of friends and someone is taking it really seriously, they're only concerned with winning and following the rules to a T, that's no fun. That can easily ruin the experience for everyone. But then if you have someone who plays the game and you can tell their heart is not in it, they don't care if they win or lose, they would probably rather be doing something else, that's no good either. Right in the middle between these 2 examples is the player who is sincere but not serious. They want to win and do their best, but not at the expense of fun. When we apply this to our work, we can approach it with a lighter, more playful attitude that is both more enjoyable for us and the people we work with. The second P is power, which he defines as having some degree of autonomy in our work or feeling like we are to some degree in control of what we're doing. He uses Netflix as an example of this. At some point, they did away with all sorts of requirements at the company, as far as how many vacation days an employee gets or how many days you need to show up at the office. They just completely stopped keeping track of when people came into work. The only thing an employee needed to take care of was doing their work. Netflix went to a completely project-focused way of evaluating performance. The result was that productivity in the company went through the roof, as did innovation and creativity. And the difference was really that the employees felt they had ownership over what they were working on. They cared about it more. Instead of being at their desks pretending to work, they were wherever having life-expanding experiences and getting their work done. For independent artists, myself included, at first I felt like this didn't apply to us. As a composer, as a writer, as a content creator, I have complete control. But then I thought about the bigger picture. When I'm rehearsing my own band, it's like I'm the CEO of Netflix or Scottflix, and I need to give the same feeling of agency or power to my fellow musicians. That's how I can get the best performance out of them. I need them to care about my music. But also, when I'm playing someone else's music, I need to pursue that feeling and try to bring it into those projects. But what if you're one of those artists that work completely by yourself? Well, that brings me to the next P. People. For many artists, we see ourselves as lone wolves. I write music by myself, work on these episodes by myself, I design my album covers alone, and I practice the drums alone. Don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. I'm an introvert, so I need a lot of alone time. But at some point, there needs to be a beholder. No matter what you do, you're going to have to present your work either to an audience or to collaborators. Ali brings up the term coined by musician Brian Eno, scenius, as in the collective genius of a scene that propels everyone's work to greatness. This has been talked about a lot because it's really true. No matter what you do creatively, the work can always be elevated by being around other creative people to inspire you, to shift your perspective and give you advice. But beyond that, having healthy relationships with friends and family is also a key ingredient for having a positive mindset. So we have to make people a priority, no matter what we do or how little interaction we need to actually do our work. If you're a human being, you need contact with other human beings. There's no getting around it. So those are the 3 Ps in a nutshell: play, power, and people. And I thought I'd just quickly go over how I'm trying to incorporate these ideas into my own process, and hopefully they might be useful for you. For me, there's the process of coming up with ideas, messing around with them, using them to make things. That's the playtime. Now, it can sometimes take me a while to get into that mode, but once I'm actually doing the work, it's fun. Whereas promoting my work, booking gigs, keeping track of the financial side of things, yuck. That's stuff I avoid. So I started using a habit tracking app called Awesome Habits. As the name implies, it's pretty awesome. Just to be clear, this isn't sponsored by them. I just really like it. I hadn't thought about good habits as potentially fun, but there's something about keeping a streak. When you see you've been doing something consistently, you don't want to break your streak. This is the secret sauce behind Duolingo. It gamifies something that you wouldn't necessarily do otherwise. And I quickly realized that this can be helpful for remembering to do all sorts of things, even the stuff I like to do, like composing and practicing. But whatever part of our creative career that we typically procrastinate on or dread doing, if we can turn that into a game and make it a habit, that will make it less of a slog. For instance, my booking issue. I hate sending out emails and having to follow up, especially if I'm under pressure. If I know there's a tour coming up and I have empty dates I need to fill, that ironically makes me want to do it less. It can feel incredibly discouraging to send out a ton of emails and get no response. But if I set it up in Awesome Habits as a daily goal of 1 email, which I can exceed if I'm into it, but the emails turn into little points in a game that I'm playing. So just getting the points gives me a certain satisfaction and hit of dopamine. And then I can look back at the data after a while and see how I'm doing. Just by making the process of booking the goal, I make myself more productive. Eventually, something is bound to come from it. But in this scenario, I'm not even waiting for the result. I'm just playing my little email game and collecting the points. So hopefully this concept of play is going to make a dent in these things that I dread, and I hope it does the same for you. Find something that you'd rather not have to do and gamify it. When it comes to power, I feel like using the habit tracker to gamify my work kind of overlaps the 2 energizers of play and power. In the book, he talks about measuring what you're actually doing as a way to have a better perspective on how you spend your time. And I don't do any time tracking. I used to when I did client work as a graphic designer, but I find it really hard to remember to set timers and turn them off. But the habit tracker gives me an overview of sorts that I can look at to see how many times I did various things this week or this month and where I could do better. And that is, in a sense, power. In the same way that having a map is a powerful thing if you're trying to figure out which way to go, knowing where you are in our creative pursuits and our relationships and our life gives us the power to point ourselves in the right direction. Another thing Ali talks about in Feel Good Productivity is self-efficacy, which is a fancy term for confidence that was cooked up by Canadian psychologist Albert Bandura in 1977. Being confident in our abilities is a way to gain agency over our work. He references studies in the book that show people who are encouraged to think positively about their ability to complete a challenge were far more likely to be successful. It's a mental shift. I've spoken a lot here about my own struggles with a negative internal dialogue. And for me, I realized I was dooming myself to failure. This is getting kind of long, so I don't want to dwell on this too much, but I realized the power of confidence when I was in college. That doesn't mean I mastered it. But I was playing a gig somewhere in New Jersey, and this guy struck up a conversation on the break. And after a while, he said, "You seem like a different person when you're playing. It's like you flip a switch and you're confident behind the drums." I thought about that a lot. I've never considered myself a confident person. I had a serious fear of public speaking as a kid, and I can be severely shy in social situations. But he was right. When I was up on stage playing music, nothing could touch me. I think this is a huge factor in whatever success I've been able to achieve in life. So when Ali Abdaal started preaching the virtues of self-efficacy, it hit me that I have more work to do here. If I can figure out how to expand that feeling of confidence that I have behind the drums to other areas of my life, it could be a game changer for me. And it all starts with how we speak to ourselves. If we can start to notice all the times we're berating ourselves and really look at what's going on and stop and say something encouraging instead, over time, that will have the effect of shifting our general outlook towards our abilities and instill some of that confidence, which will lead to more successes and better work and a more positive perspective on life. Okay, I already talked about how we need people around us to inspire us and the genius and all that. True. But for me, at least, I do most of my work alone. There's nobody else here. My family's upstairs, but the only thing I really work on with other people is when I'm playing music. And that's fine. Like I said, I need a lot of alone time. But I'm also a human being, and it's easy for me to forget that. My interests kind of have a way of taking over my brain so that when I'm with other people, I will still be thinking about some composition I'm working on or a podcast episode I'm developing. I realized that the Awesome Habits app is actually really helpful for making sure I lift my head up and engage with other people. And again, I think doing this gamifies it a little. I get points for making contact with people. So every week I'm looking at my score and it inspires me to reach out to people. And living in Iceland, the time difference makes it tricky to talk to my family in the US because most of my free time is when they're all asleep. But making a weekly goal of calls to them makes it harder to let a week go by without getting in touch. If you enjoyed this video, you'd almost certainly like the one I did about creative collaboration, which you can click on here. Thanks so much for hanging out. I'll catch you in the next episode. Until then, keep the flow.